Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast, where we kind of like dig into these mysteries and untold stories, the ones that leave you wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're tackling a mystery that has gripped the world for years now.
It really has.
The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370.
It's a case that really highlights just how vast and mysterious our own planet is,
Yeah.
We have all this technology, all this ability to track and monitor, and yet something can just vanish like that without a trace.
Yeah, it's almost like the ocean just swallowed it whole.
Right.
Okay, so for our listeners who might not remember all the details, let's set the scene.
Okay.
March 8th, 2014.
2014.
A Boeing 777 takes off from Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
Headed for Beijing, carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members.
Right.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary at all, and then less than an hour into the flight, poof, it just disappears from radar.
Gone. And initially, the search focused on the South China Sea, where it last communicated with air traffic control.
Seems logical, right?
Yeah. Seems pretty straightforward, but then military radar data started to suggest a different story. It suggested that the plane might have actually turned back, like completely deviated from its planned route.
Wait, so everyone's looking east, and the plane might have actually been going west?
That's what it looked like.
That's a pretty big change in direction.
Huge curveball right off the bat.
Talk about a curveball right off the bat.
Exactly, and this was just the beginning of the confusion. There were reports of possible sightings coming in from all over, fishermen, oil rig workers, people on remote islands. Everyone seemed to have a story.
Oh, wow.
But none of them could be confirmed.
I can't even imagine the families waiting for news, every little bit of information, every rumor.
Oh, absolutely.
Must have felt like a roller coaster.
Just agonizing.
Of hope and despair, yeah.
Absolutely. And then just when the investigation seemed to be hitting a wall, enter the satellite data.
Ooh.
And this is where things take a really fascinating turn.
Okay, this is the part where we put on our detective hats. Everyone hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single clue in this complex case.
Don't want to miss this.
All right, tell us about this satellite data. What did it reveal?
Well, analysis of data from Inmarsat,
Inmarsat.
a satellite communications company, showed something incredible. The plane, despite going silent, had actually continued flying for hours.
What?
And the data pointed the search thousands of miles away from that initial area to the vast expanse of the southern Indian Ocean.
So the plane was flying for hours without any communication.
Hours.
That's eerie. But how can they tell where it went based on just satellite data?
It's a bit technical, but basically the satellites received pings from the plane at regular intervals.
Okay.
Even though the plane wasn't transmitting its location directly, these pings allowed experts to calculate its approximate path and speed based on tiny variations in the signal.
So it's almost like they were able to triangulate the plane's position.
Exactly.
Even though it wasn't actively communicating.
You
Got
bet.
it. It's like something out of a spy thriller. And now the search area shifts from the South China Sea to this vast remote stretch of the Indian Ocean.
A whole different ballgame.
That's a pretty daunting task.
It was massive. The most expensive aviation search in history. Multiple countries joined forces. They deployed state-of-the-art equipment to scan an area larger than some countries.
Wow.
It was an incredible display of international cooperation and technological capability.
You'd think with that level of effort they would have found something conclusive, right?
You would, wouldn't you? But despite years of searching, that initial underwater search concluded in 2017 with no major breakthroughs. There were moments of hope. Like when they detected acoustic signals?
Oh, really?
That they thought were from the plane's black boxes.
Okay.
But even those ultimately led to dead ends. It was like the ocean was determined to keep its secrets.
It's almost as if the plane had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions and a profound sense of mystery. And when there's a void of concrete information, human nature is to fill it with speculation, right?
Absolutely.
So let's dive into some of these theories.
Okay.
What are the most prominent explanations that have been put forward? What are people saying?
Well, one of the most prominent theories, and perhaps the most unsettling, revolves around the pilot.
The pilot. Okay, I'm intrigued. What makes people suspect that the pilot might have been involved?
Well, there are a few pieces of the puzzle that have fueled this theory. First, you have the deliberate shutdown of the communication systems, the transponder ACARs. All of that was intentionally switched off, which suggests a conscious action rather than just a simple malfunction.
But couldn't a mechanical failure or some kind of electrical problem
Yeah.
also cause those systems to go offline?
It's possible, but less likely given the sequence of events. And then you have the FBI analysis of the captain's home flight simulator.
Great.
They discovered a simulated flight path that was eerily similar to the plane's projected path based on that limited satellite data.
Hold on. The pilot had a flight simulator at home, and he had actually flown a route like this before, at least virtually. That does raise some serious questions.
It does. And while the evidence is circumstantial, it's led some to believe that the pilot might have been responsible for deliberately diverting the plane. But of course, it's just one possibility among many.
Right, because there are other theories out there, aren't there? Ones that don't involve any malicious intent.
Exactly. Some people believe that a mechanical failure could have led to a catastrophic event that disabled all communication and sent the plane off course. A sudden power interruption, for example, could explain why certain systems went offline. There's even speculation that the crew might have become unresponsive due to something like hypoxia, a lack of oxygen, which can impair judgment and eventually lead to unconsciousness.
So basically a perfect storm of unfortunate events that left the plane flying on autopilot with no one at the controls. That's a terrifying thought.
It is. But even with these theories, there are holes, unanswered questions that make it hard to settle on any one explanation definitively. And the fact that the main wreckage of the plane hasn't been found doesn't exactly help matters.
You're right, finding that wreckage would provide so many answers. But you said earlier that they have found something right. Tell us about that.
Yes. Over the years, various pieces of debris have washed ashore on islands in the Indian Ocean, thousands of miles from that initial search area. A flaperon, which is part of the wing, was found on Reunion Island, and then there were pieces of the right stabilizer part of the tail that turned up on other islands.
Okay, so they found pieces of the plane, but in completely different locations. How is that even possible? Wouldn't they all be clustered together near the crash site?
That's where ocean currents come into play. These pieces were carried by currents over vast distances, and the patterns of their movement actually corroborate the models that investigators were using to predict the plane's final resting place.
So even though the main wreckage is still missing, these scattered pieces of debris provide some valuable clues. They support the idea that the plane did indeed go down in the southern Indian Ocean, as the satellite data suggested.
Exactly, and it's a testament to the power of scientific analysis how we can piece together a story, even from fragments scattered across a vast and unpredictable ocean. But even with these pieces of evidence, we're still left with that big question mark hanging over this whole tragedy.
And for the families of those on board, the lack of closure must be unbearable, not knowing what happened to their loved ones where they are. It's a pain that's hard to even fathom.
It's a stark reminder that even in this age of technological advancement, some events remain beyond our grasp, defying explanation. And while we may never fully understand what happened to MH370, its disappearance wasn't just a human tragedy. It also exposed gaps in our aviation systems, leading to some significant changes in the way we track aircraft and ensure safety.
That's an important point. We can't bring back those who were lost. But perhaps some good can come from this tragedy if it helps prevent something similar from happening again. So what kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, one of the most notable changes is the push for a longer battery life on underwater locator beacons. Remember those signals we talked about earlier that turned out to be a dead end? If those beacons had lasted longer, the search might have had a very different outcome.
That makes sense. The longer those beacons transmit, the better the chance of finding the wreckage, right?
Absolutely. There are also new standards for aircraft position reporting over open ocean. Before, MH370 planes only reported their location every 30 minutes or so when flying over vast areas like the ocean. Now it's far more frequent, giving us a much better chance of tracking flights if something goes wrong.
So it's like having a more constant GPS signal, but for airplanes. It seems like a pretty simple change that could make a huge difference in a situation like this.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of flight data recorders, the black boxes. Remember how they only store a limited amount of data? Well, now there's a push to increase that recording time, potentially giving us more information to understand what happened in the final hours of a flight.
So even though we may never fully understand what happened to MH370, its disappearance has forced the aviation industry to take a hard look at its safety protocols, making flying safer for all of us. It's a bittersweet legacy, but a legacy nonetheless.
It is. It highlights the importance of learning from such events, constantly striving for improvement even when faced with the unknown. And, there's one incredibly humbling fact that emerged during the search for Flight 370.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me.
While searching for the missing plane, they actually stumbled upon something completely unrelated, the wreckage of a ship that had been missing for over 140 years.
Wow, that's incredible. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Here we are searching for a modern plane with all our technology, and we uncover a relic from a completely different era. It's a
Yeah.
powerful reminder that there's still so much we don't know about our own planet. It really makes you realize just how vast and mysterious the ocean is,
Yeah.
and how many secrets it must hold.
Absolutely. It speaks to the enduring power of mystery, you
Yeah.
know? Even when faced with seemingly impossible odds, there's always a chance for unexpected discovery.
Well said. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the disappearance of MH370, I think it's important to acknowledge that while we've explored a lot of information, examined the facts, and even delved into some of the prevailing theories, the core mystery remains. What happened to that plane and the people on board? It's a question that continues to haunt us.
It's a question that continues to fascinate and frustrate in equal measure, and it's one that may never have a definitive answer. But perhaps that's part of what makes the story so compelling. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, the vastness of the unknown and the enduring power of human curiosity when we're faced with something we just can't explain.
So as we leave our listeners to ponder this enduring mystery, what final thoughts would you like to leave them with?
I think the story of MH370 reminds us that even in our hyper-connected world, some secrets are just destined to remain hidden, perhaps forever. But it also underscores the importance of perseverance, of never giving up on the search for answers, even when the odds seem stacked against us.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe someday another piece of the puzzle will emerge, shedding new light on this haunting mystery. Until then, it serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring power of the unknown and the limits of human understanding. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of aviation's most perplexing mysteries.